Mike Pence is one of those pro-life proponents. And honestly, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, that's your own business, okay? And I, in my own opinion, believe that that's a personal choice. So I guess I'm on the choice side. I'm not really pro-abortion, but again, I am not anti-abortion either. I am for a person to have their own individual rights, especially women to have full control over their bodies. So if that's choice, then I'm in the choice camp. All right, but that's not even really the purpose of this. Excuse me. I am so tired, and I mean I am absolutely exhausted listening to these various political people, Mike Pence, the Prime Minister of England, come over and talk about the words that you're going to hear as follows.
More than 240 years ago, our founders wrote words that have echoed through the ages. They declared these truths to be self-evident, that we are, all of us, endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
I guess by all of us, black people weren't considered part of all of us, okay? And he still makes reference to that. No reference to the fact that we as black people weren't even considered human, okay? So, but let him continue, because he's making reference to Roe v. Wade within a few minutes. And I got a comment about that one, but let's continue.
44 years ago, our Supreme Court turned away from the first of these timeless ideals. But today, 3 generations hence, because of all of you and the many thousands who stand with us in marches like this all across the nation, life is winning again in America.
All right, when he made reference to the 44 years ago, he's talking about Roe v. Wade and the fact that the Supreme Court upheld Roe v. Wade, allowing women the rights to abortion, i.e. the right to choose. I'm going back even further, okay, because approximately 110 years ago, the Supreme Court upheld the fact that black people were not considered human. And we actually didn't start to obtain, quote unquote, our legal humanity until after the Civil War. Now I say legal, okay, i.e. rights that any other human being who was a citizen of this country would have. And we actually didn't obtain the majority or most of our rights until after the civil rights period, which was in the 1960s. So we can effectively say that we were not truly considered human beings with all the rights attached to it until approximately 1970. So we have actually been human, quote unquote, and free for less than 50 years. Now, if you didn't or don't know what went down in the Dred Scott case, basically on March 6, 1857, a quote unquote slave living in the territory of Kansas sued for his freedom in the United States Supreme Court. And the court found against him. Now, this was framed as a question of whether slavery should be allowed in the West. And if you're familiar with the Missouri Compromise, where we basically got sold out, they basically gave the right to self-determination, and again, this was later, but they basically gave the right of self-determination to the states to basically decide whether, let me back up. The Missouri Compromise of 1850, where they were making a decision whether the Western states or Western territories were either free or slave states. Okay, that was a compromise. So Missouri came in as a slave state, but the other states that came in subsequently were considered free states. But then they came back later on and made a further decision that popular sovereignty would be the name of the game, i.e. a state could vote whether it wanted to be a slave state or a free state. And that's when you started getting all the stuff going on. But anyway, back to the Dred Scott case. Dred Scott had been a slave of an army doctor who had moved around from slave states to various free states, of which Illinois and Wisconsin were both free states. So he felt that since he was living in a state without slavery, he should have been free. The Supreme Court, however, decided against him. The court was already stacked by Supreme Court justices. 5 of the 9 were from slave states, and then you had another person, Robert Greer of Pennsylvania, who was a pro-slavery guy. So he was basically a dead Indian, if you want to use that vernacular, as far as being able to get his freedom. But he was basing his case on the fact that since he had lived and his residence was Illinois or Wisconsin, that he shouldn't have been maintained as a slave. The court came back and they specifically said that Mr. Scott was not free based on his residence in either Illinois or Wisconsin because he was not considered a person under the U.S. Constitution. And in the opinion of the justices, black people were not considered citizens when the Constitution was drafted in 1787. So now I ask you, this prick is out there speaking to this crowd and has the nerve to say that the founders claimed that all men are created equal, when that absolutely wasn't true and it's just a bunch of propaganda. Yeah, I know this is a rant video because every time I hear them making a statement, and then when the Prime Minister of England came over and referred to it, it just lit my fuse. So I had to get this particular video out here. So in my opinion, when they wrote that particular phrase, in order to be correct when referred to, they should say that all white men are created equal. And that would actually bring reality and an absolute sense of what they were truly thinking to the public for. But for them to basically camouflage it by not expressly stating what was meant by those words, to me, is a total injustice.